Hello, and welcome to another episode of And All Shall Be Well. I'm your host, Megan Rohrer. Today's conversation is with Precious Green. Precious has a lot of wisdom, y'all.
And
Listen
she's
to it.
back. And she's
Yeah. Part of the reason that Precious is a beloved guest is because she is so willing to tell us stories that come from deep in her soul. This story of her grandmother and her journey through grief is one that shows the depth of her heart and the ways that she loves it. You can almost feel inside the story the ways that Precious's heart has developed as if in a crock pot of joy and support and Easter church hats, with the kind of support that makes it possible for Precious to be moving and breathing in the world in a way that is loving and joyfully infectious. This is a story about the grief that we hold, in hopes that you'll feel a little less alone if you are someone who is holding grief. And this is a story that talks about how things can shift and change from being unbearable to being something different, a breakthrough perhaps that shifts the dynamic and helps us move, still with the grief, but doing something that is different. And sometimes that's what wellness looks like: tiny shifts that make it more possible to breathe, or tiny shifts that make it possible to support our neighbors where we didn't used to have capacity. I hope that you enjoy this conversation because it is real, and because as Precious is describing what changes, you might be able to respect and love the little bits inside of you that have had the courage to change too.
My name is Precious Green, and I should say professionally, I am the Director of Community and Partnerships as well as the House Moderator at Manny's. And basically, that means I get to talk with an incredible array of people about so many issues, primarily around civics and politics, but also around medicine, around technology, around community, even around loneliness, which is pretty impactful. So that's me. My grandmother was like, my grandfather passed away 2001, and I was with my grandmother. He had dementia, so, and I had kind of pulled back on my life to help her take care of him because it was a lot. And then it became too much for both of us, and so he was in a nursing home, and so we weren't with him when he passed. But I will never forget, we were in my car, we were heading back from the mall because she was a St. John knits kind of gal, and the people at Nordstrom, they knew me because they knew me as her driver, and they would be like, "Hey, could you tell Miss Green we have a sale going on, or we just got some new clothes?" And literally, I was just like, "My name's Precious. She named me. You can't remember." But we were coming back from one of these shopping excursions, and I got a call on my phone. We're on the expressway in Atlanta, which, if anyone has ever been to any of the expressways in Atlanta, whoo, they are a journey. They are an opportunity to really get to know yourself because you're going to be sitting for a while. But we were on 285 and got the call. And I know I shouldn't have been talking and driving, but I was really cool. And I picked it up, and they told me, and I threw the phone at my grandmother. Thank God she caught it. But I also freaked her out by throwing the phone. And that's how we heard and, made our way back. And needless to say, like, she and my grandfather grew up together in Malvern, Arkansas. So, and she essentially was like, "I pick you," from a young age. So, the love of her life uh, was gone. And even with that loss, she went on for over 20 years. And, you know, I don't know how she did it. It wasn't like I was with her every moment of the day, but she would always talk about my grandfather, and he would want her to take that cruise. He would want her, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yes, he would." And she would always express her gratitude because she was able to continue to live her life the way that she was accustomed, because military benefits are great and things. Um, and she and I actually deepened our relationship after he passed away. And she just was so fascinating to me. Never met a stranger, even if she couldn't actually remember meeting you. It was always like, hey, and just lived her life. Like, I like to think that, you know, whatever the society at the time was saying about her as a woman, a person of color, so as someone from Arkansas, a little town called Malvern, the brick capital of the world, however, um, she fully showed up and was fabulous and found a way to have fun, to enjoy herself, um, to find something to smile about. And she just had that energy always. And I know I carry that with me. And, she, when she turned 85, she was just like, I want to party. And that began like our tradition of having these huge, not huge, but big events. Like her 85th, I think we had like 200 people or something. Her 90th was a little bit smaller, but still was really lovely. And she danced and she greeted everyone. And then it was so cute. Her 95th was a little smaller because she was slowing down. Her 100th was during COVID, which, fun times. But what was kind of wild was her 99th was also during COVID because it was 2020. And that was her first Zoom experience. And she got fully dressed, like lipstick, cute dress, pearls, hair done, sitting on a computer. And then my sister, who's also in Atlanta, called me, and because we were getting everything set up, and I think I just had like a button down on, and my sister was like, "You're wearing that?" And I'm like, "What? What do you mean? It's a Zoom call." And she's like, "Grandma, it's for grandma. It's a Zoom call for grandma." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." So I jumped off, got into this like fancy dress and everything, did my hair, put on my jewelry. And you find yourself kind of sitting up a little more and you're like, yes, I'm here. And it was so cute because she was like, this is for me, and I'm like, that to walk every day, just being like, this is for me. I get to do this and see this. That was amazing. And when she turned 100, we basically had what I like to call, her name was Nancy. So her nickname was Fancy Nancy. So we had what we call the Fancy Nancy Festival because the vaccines had come out, and we were like, I don't care who you are or how you personally feel about vaccines, you are not crossing this threshold unless you have been vaccinated. And to have so many people come together and like fly in, the birthday itself, we had a birthday brunch, and then she took a carriage ride around downtown, and she was on the news. And then that Saturday, we had a carnival with rides and ice cream. She loved ice cream, and this big thing at our family church. And then that Sunday, we had a church service, and she was fed it there. And then we had another Zoom party, and she just walked with so much joy. And this is a very long piece. I apologize. I just realized because I'm like, okay, find the note, precious. But so she turned 102 this summer. And I will be forever ever grateful that I was able to make it back home. She really had slowed down. And my mom told me after she passed that a week or so before her birthday, she had told her that she was ready to see James, my grandfather. And we just did dinner at the house at her place. I cooked, and for once, me and my fancy shishi cooking, everybody loved everything. I was like, oh my gosh, the gods are in my favor. This is amazing. There were like no leftovers. I decided I wanted to do whole fish, and no one blinked, no one flinched. My dad was like, "You only did 2 fish?" I was like, "I didn't know what you people were gonna eat." I did like a roast chicken, like a classic French style, because my grandparents were in France when my grandfather was in the military, and it was just there was so much love in the room and so much joy, and grandma was laughing, and when she saw her cake, she was like, "Cake," and what have you. And I say that um she decided when she was ready to leave this realm, because she had her birthday, so she had cake, she had ice cream the next day. The following week or two was the 4th of July, so there were fireworks. And then she passed away on the 5th. So I was like, she was like, I'm out. Which comes across kind of crass. But I'm like, no, literally, she was like, I'm out. I've done all I can do. I've brought all the joy I can bring. Now it's up to you all. And that loss was a gut punch. Like it there was confusion for me, because intellectually I understood, one, we're all going to leave this realm. She was 102. So it's not like she left anything on the table. She lived an incredible life. And yet the emotional, I don't know, inner child side of me was like, yeah, 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 but she's always been with me. She's always going to be with me. She is my daily call. She is my North Star. And, how do I go on? Oh my gosh, I didn't do all these things I wanted to do with her. I didn't meet all these milestones, and now it's too late. It doesn't matter. And oh my goodness, how am I going to, walk in the world, and what can I do? And I fell short, and all that stuff. And, it I would say probably I was in uh, a dark place, we'll say, for a few months. Like I had moments of sparkle, like when I had to work, and do things. I was like, okay, in this moment, I can focus on this. Because I mean, even thinking about it, when when she passed, and I found out, I actually had an event at work, and I still did it. And I was like, I need this, because I don't want to think about my world right now. So I don't even remember what the topic was. It doesn't matter. We had a great conversation. Funny, the day that I flew out to go home with this gentleman, oh Lord. He has one of those names that you try really hard, and you practice, and you pronounce, and you pronounce, and get it perfect until you actually meet the person, and you butcher it. But he was lovely. And had a great conversation with him. His wife is Priya Parker, and she wrote a book called The Art of Gathering, which I read before we did my grandmother's centennial birthday. And I basically was like, I know you have a book, and we're here to talk about your book, but I just want to talk about your wife, because her work is phenomenal. I mean, she studies how we come together. That's amazing. But yeah, so had that, and then got on a red eye to get to Atlanta. And I would say, honestly, it wasn't until November when I really felt like uh, there was a crack in this wall of grief and sadness and loss and woulda, shoulda, coulda, and, you know, dare I say, like, self hatred for feeling like man, she did all these things for me, and I didn't do any of these things I wanted to do for her. Or, she only wanted me to do this, and I couldn't even do, finally cracked through, and not even reframe. Like I always knew this, but really reminded myself and really stepped out with the knowledge that yes, her physical body is not here, but she's always here. My grandfather, they're always here. Um, they're here with me right now as I'm telling these stories. My grandfather was a huge storyteller. Um, when I check in on people, I'm like, can I get you anything? Are you okay? The complimenting. My grandmother's very stylish. So growing up with that, I'm like, oh my goodness, so you see people and you instantly put them at ease. And we're like, oh my goodness, tell me the story behind that t-shirt. And then they go on, and you're just like, okay, we now have connected. And just, I guess November, I would say came to the point of acceptance, and also knowing that she would want me, one, she'd be like, girl, stop. She would want me to continue, you know, my walk towards being the best me I can be. I mean, she's the one who named me Precious, which when I was in high school, I was like, I'm changing this name. This is terrible. The teasing, I can't take it. I'm tired of Lord of the Rings. Oh, I hate the, it was either Lord of the Rings people or people singing Precious Lord. And I was like, none of you are Mahalia Jackson. Don't do that. Or strangely enough, people who named their pets Precious and thought I would want to know. And I was like, I didn't ask. I did. Nothing about me says I want to know your pet. you know um but I grew to love this name, and part of the love was the fact that she loved telling the story of naming me. And like, even when my mom gave her remarks at the funeral, and my mom made us put a special section, and it was like, from her Ruth. And so she was like, she was my Naomi, and or yes, what I'm talking about. And my mom like went into extreme detail about the birthing process, and I was just like, whoa, 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 it's a lot. But to sit there and hear even more detail about how it happened, I'm like, I'll never let this name go. Like, I am so close to her for that. Not many of us get that additional connection. Um, and so, like, my grandmother had her own business. I don't have my own business, even though, Sparkle Consulting may be a thing. But one of the things, she was very, she loved family, and she loved her church. She loved God. And I carry that with me. Like, I'm very involved with my church family, and it's a different philosophy than what I grew up with. But the fulfillment that I know my grandmother experienced, I experienced. She was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, which is the first historically Black Greek letter. Um, the first historically Black sorority. We say Greek letter organization, but actually the Alphas were first. But she joined that in 1946. So she was a diamond member, and, had things around her house, and her favorite colors were pink and green and all the things. And, that was one of the ways she gave back in community. And I also pledged and am active with a chapter here in Oakland. And there are members there who remind me of her. And I just love it because I'm like, Grandma, look, I ran for office and I won, and I'm doing it, kind of thing. So Yeah. I mean, but working through it, it was definitely work. I did spend a lot of days just sitting at home. I spent a lot of days, like literally, I was telling my sister that I baptized every corner in my apartment because I would just spontaneously just cry everywhere. And then I was like, I baptized the corners, I baptized the rug, I baptized the kitchen, the bath, the office, all the things. I did get help. Kaiser has a grief support network, and that was really helpful. Um, but at the end of the day, I don't know what combination actually cracked the code, but something about just waking up 4 or 5 months later and just being like, okay, that has happened. And now what's next? Um, Actually, no. I do remember I went to, around Halloween and the traditions of Dia de los Muertos. Oh my gosh. I went to the Oakland Museum because they had a huge celebration and they had ofrenda altars all throughout the space. And I know these poor children, hopefully they didn't see me and weren't traumatized, but they had a lot of performances and they had one group of kids performing, and it was right next to this ofrenda that I learned later a friend of mine had a part in building, and it was created by Black girls celebrating their ancestors. And so they had their pictures, their grandma styling in the kitchen, or women they looked up to. So Shirley Chisholm was there and all these other people, and these cultural remnants, if you will, that are just so unique. But if you know, you know. And I was sitting there trying to look at these kids, looking at this ofrenda, trying to make sure I could still see because this woman kept coming in my way. I'm like, you're in my through line, you're in my view line. And I was crying. I was bawling. Like I used all my Kleenex. I was just like, what is happening? What is going on? And, you know, thankfully in public, I'm a quiet crier. I'm like, no wailing allowed. So I don't think the kids heard me. They did their dancing and what have you, and the crowd kind of dissipated. I got myself together, saw the rest of the altars, and I think maybe that is what sort of triggered the oh, there's a there's a way forward that doesn't mean you just act like the person isn't with you anymore, like that there wasn't any good to come. Now you have an opportunity to have like this conversation where I've probably gone on for 10, 15 minutes talking about her,
Wow, I
you
love
know,
it.
and I came home and I was like, I'm gonna make an ofrenda, which it's very funny because I'm not Mexican. I do not that is not my heritage. It's an inspiration. But I went about my business. I was like, what are the elements? Because if when I get curious about something, or I'm like, oh, I want to know more, I will do a deep dive. The internet is my friend and my enemy. And I was like spiraling and like, I gotta get this, I gotta get that, I gotta do this. And then I think it might have been right after I ordered the bread that it hit me that uh, this does not reflect so, I was just like, okay, let's the idea of an altar, a celebration, we can work with that. We want to represent the different elements, we can work with that. But how would we do that for Nancy Mae Green? So instead of marigolds, I got pink roses. Instead of the bread, I made cornbread. And then I gave the bread to friends at work, and they're like, it was really good. And I'm like, oh, I missed it. But okay, cool. I have her picture and my grandfather's picture and my mom's parents because they passed before I was born. I have a piece of African wax fabric because my grandmother loved traveling to Liberia and throughout West Africa. And as I learned later, she and my grandfather opened their home to so many Liberians at different points with the various conflicts there, and really, you know, did all they could to support that community as they had to reestablish themselves here. Oops. um, there some little chocolate covered pecans from C's Candies because she loved those things. Or yeah, pecans. And she would, that was the easiest gift to get her. Just, yeah, I remember being in the Vegas airport and there was some candy company, I don't remember the name, and I bought a box of their chocolates. I was like, hey, she ripped through them. And it was just like, she's 100 at this point. Even her doctor was like, yeah, sure, sugar. And yet here we are, you know? But so, you know, those elements are all there. And I have my candle. I'm still, you know, perfecting the ritual, if you will, but having that there and seeing it as a place of celebration and a place of remembrance and a conversation, you know, an invitation to have a conversation with them, that was such a breakthrough. Because, you know, without that shift, it would, thinking of her would always remind me of the loss. And you just, that is, you can't navigate from a negative space. Like, you know, it's math. I forget what it's called, but you know, the negative numbers, they had their own term or something. But they're not, you don't want negative numbers. You want positive numbers. You want exponential numbers. And, you know, the work for me to do now is to continue down the path that I'm carving out to have, you know, exponential joy, and yeah, exponential celebration. And
Yeah. Well, I
you know,
was thinking as you were talking, like, because you said that your grandmother used to just declare things she had to do that were great
mhm.
because your grandfather would have wanted it that way. And so I was remembering that you were going to work on talking to yourself better. But so I want to offer you this as like a in case you fail at it every once in a while, like let your grandma's voice be the counter narrative that
Wow.
tells you to do a wonderful thing, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Take a cruise, whatever the thing is that you think like. And I love that you didn't believe her that your grandfather necessarily would have wanted it, because I love that idea that you can have conversations with her where she
Mhm.
just encourages you to do fabulous stuff even if it's not right by whatever rational reason. It's just the one who's always saying like, do the sparkle oriented thing, right? And
Okay,
it's
that's
I love
awesome.
that as a second. Get your
Yeah,
feet
I
on the
love
ground.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love that. And it was, she was hilarious. I think you would have gotten a kick out of her.
If there is a way that people want to contact you or be in touch or get Sparkle Consultancy support, or you know, hang out at Manny's, whatever contact information is your something that you'd be comfortable sharing in the world. Is there anything
Yeah,
you'd like to share with
sure.
people?
Um, if I'm being very, very honest, I'm kind of like the Gen Zers that I work with, where you can send me email. My personal inbox is, ooh. However, people can find me on Instagram. I think my handle is at PGITTY. It's my older brother's nickname for me. Or just look me up. My last name is Green, like the color. I was not named after a crayon, like this kid in third grade thought I was, and then he got in trouble because he dumped all the crayons trying to find the. I love that story. I'm like, Casey. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with people there. That honestly is the easiest.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's podcast. I hope if you appreciated it, you will like and subscribe and do all of those things that people do when they are grateful for content that comes to you for free. If you are interested in helping to make sure more content like this is able to be in the world, please consider joining on to my Patreon and, giving and providing loving support whenever you can. If you don't have a lot to give, that's cool too. Just know that you can check out my social media pages for encouragement and kindness and joy and whatever support I'm able to share any given week. And I hope it trickles down into your life and transforms into love and is useful for you.